Greetings adventurers and welcome back to Adventure Game Show Geek. Today, I'm talking about Raven. Raven is a lot of things, a cult classic beloved by many, the muse of hundreds of awe-inspiring and awesome fan works, the BBC's biggest mistake in not making a Series 13, perhaps the greatest game show of all time, and, most relevantly, 20 years old today. Happy birthday! Happy birthday from someone who wasn't even alive for your first few series. Also, the reboot turned 5 on the 4th of December, so happy belated birthday to that as well. And don't worry, I was alive for that. But all of that is common knowledge. It only takes a glance to see how brilliant it is. But did you know? Raven also functions as an eco-parable, an extended metaphor for the risks of overusing and abusing the resources of the natural world. Yes, I was that child in English class. Of course, I also understand how you may think that's a stretch. So, come on, humour me, and let's celebrate this anniversary by revisiting the expansive, confusing, often bizarre but always compelling lore of Raven with a green lens, and prove that Raven wasn't just inspiring warriors, but eco-warriors. Now, the majority of Raven's storyline is contained within its 3 spin-off series and the 2 reboot series. So, let's do this chronologically, starting with the island. The main plot of Raven the Island revolves around reclaiming the island of Alaunus from Navar's control by retrieving an acorn from the Enchanted Oak. The Enchanted Oak, sometimes referred to as the Great Oak, is the more than a millennia-old magical tree whose wood is used to carve staves of power, like those wielded by Raven, Princess Erina, and Cyrus the Astronomer. However, evil outlaw Baron Navar decides he wants one of his own and proceeds to steal the entire tree from the Forest of Dawntime, because stealing a branch just wasn't villainous enough. He then uses his staff to raise an army of demons, which helps him to successfully take over Alaunus, but has the unfortunate side effect of splintering his life force to the point he has to eat the souls of children to survive. This is not important, nor is it ever referenced again. During the 4 years Navar ruled Alaunus, he proceeded to do a terrible job of it, doing things like banishing all the people, destroying all the infrastructure, and cursing the rivers, making them too toxic to even touch. It almost makes you want to bring Macbeth into rule. Now, curses as a metaphor for pollution is an interesting point, and one which will be brought up again later, but the real thing I want to focus on is his treatment of the Enchanted Oak. If uprooting it wasn't enough, Navar proceeded to lock it in the royal vault and started over-harvesting its wood to make even more staves of power for his demoned army. This is a problem on many fronts. Firstly, demons do not need staves of power. They can kill people with their eyes. They can kill people with their breath. They can even kill people by vaguely waving their arms in their general direction. They do not need staves of power. And that's excluding demons with extra powers, like summoning fireballs. And not only does Navar waste the tree's resources, but he does too to an extent at which the tree starts to die. In comparison, when Raven awards a Staff of Power, he only gives them to the best of the best, the ones who would make the best use of them, and only after testing, and testing them again. And that's only once or twice a year. Navar handed them out to his demons like sweeties. To me, this is easily comparable to how over-farming and wastage of natural resources harms our planet. And you have to admit that it's fitting that Navar is toppled not by force, not in a grand flashy showdown, but by the planting of a tree. But of course, that isn't the end of Navar's environmental evil. In Raven the Secret Temple, he does it again by cursing Alaunus with an eternal winter, like literally changing the climate. This is extra fitting, as one of the ways climate change is going to most affect the UK is by destroying the Gulf Stream, the current that keeps us warm. Let's just say that if it reaches that point, things are gonna get a lot colder around here. But other than that, nothing much else can be found in the Secret Temple. Unless you really want to read into Satyarani's speech about the virtues of flower petals. Likewise, you can't really find anything of note in Raven the Dragon's Eye, unless you want me to go onto a tangent about how it makes a pretty good allegory for nuclear weaponry. Because, I mean, come on, an evil magic rock that corrupts everyone around it to the extent an entire kingdom needs to be closed off? That is so dangerous that no one should use it regardless of intention? But I digress. that leads us to the reboot, but before we do that, let's talk golden rings. Golden rings, or enchanted gold in general, is the foundation of the Raven universe. After all, it was the 6 golden symbols that returned magic to the land. Golden staves are only given to the greatest of warriors. And the rings themselves are so precious that they are desired and hoarded by most species, from humans to dwarves to dragons and even spiders. And because of this, other creatures use them as bait to catch them, such as trolls, demons, and even trees in the case of the chain trees from Series 1. They are a core part of the ecosystem. And the rings themselves are of interesting origin. They can be forged, mined, alchemically synthesized, and they even grow on trees, such as the wisdom tree. And speaking of the wisdom tree, it is yet another example of the theme of trees being killed. The one that features in the original version of Demon Square in itself is the last of a whole grove of wisdom, reduced to just one. This is interesting, but also took place long before the events of Raven, so must sadly be ignored, but this isn't the only time we hear about a mass wipeout of wisdom trees. In a game released on the CBBC website alongside the Raven reboot, entitled Raven: True Warrior's Path, there is an in-game mini-story arc. It consists of levels Tomb Trap, Island Hop, and the last Riddle Tree, and you have to find and protect the last 3 wisdom trees before Navar can get to them first. The realisation of this truly fascinating concept is as crude and slapdash as the rest of the game, but it's still important here, because the last 3 wisdom trees in existence, the last of a whole species, and this is even more striking when you consider the fact that when the challenge Demon Square, renamed as Demon Path, made its reappearance in the reboot, our wisdom tree was absent. Was it also destroyed? And we can clearly tell who is responsible, given both the fact that Raven says we need to protect them from Navar, and the fervour in which Navar hunts for golden rings in the reboot, even sent demons to ransack challenges and strip them of treasure, also he can absorb their magic for himself, which is, again, another form of over-farming of natural resources on Navar's behalf. When Raven sends their warriors on a challenge, they have to complete it to claim the rings, and on the rare cases where a warrior can claim rings but fail a challenge, Raven often makes them forfeit those rings, once again showing responsible restraint where Navar just consumes and consumes. Not to mention there's even more emphasis on how Navar is cursing and killing the land. I find the fact it's so often used to make water toxic so telling, especially since water is so easily contaminated with pollutants from mining or waste disposal in our world. And I'm drawing to a close here. There's a million little threads still left for me to pick at, such as the way Navar traps the magical creatures of the Forest of Golden Orbs, or how he turned the mountain sprites to stone just to use them as guardians, and honestly just the unending motif of trees dying. And despite it all, Raven is always right there with their warriors, ready to free a spirit, to purify a river, to plant a tree. Truly the land's protector in every way. Now, of course, I know some of you will be thinking that I'm reaching, that it's just a silly children's game show, that sometimes the curtains are just blue. And to that, I have to say, is it? Is it such a stretch that a show, one of whose main production goals was to, and I quote, bring the natural rugged beauty of the Kernagoms to the living rooms of kids across the UK, would want to encourage its viewers to keep them that way? That a show that tells children they have the power to save the world would actually encourage them to do it? And when you think about it this way, it makes it even sadder that the reboot never kicked off properly, because it's still such an important and relevant message. But it's also a message that won't fade. For, as a wise man told us all, write a name on the water and it will be forgotten in a moment. Inscribe another in the sand and it will be quickly washed away. The name that is written in the hearts and minds of warriors will be remembered for all time. And I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say, such a name is Raven. Here's to 20 years of love and many more to come. Until next time, it's only a game, isn't it?